Hello and welcome to the ONTIC Connected Intelligence Podcast. I'm Chuck Randolph, ONTIC's Chief Security Officer. Join us as we delve into valuable insights and practical advice that will empower you to navigate the complexities of modern corporate security and risk. We're here to share knowledge from experienced leaders and innovators in the field. All right, get settled and let's dive in. Ian Johnson is the current threat manager on the Coinbase Protective Intelligence team. In this role, Ian is responsible for the assessment and management of all life safety threats impacting Coinbase operations and assets. In addition to threat management, Ian leverages his expertise in security operations, incident response, case management, executive protection, and diligence to support any cross-functional partners who make up the larger corporate security umbrella. With over 13 years of experience in private security, Ian seeks to partner with both internal and external security leaders to hone his skills and help make businesses as safe and resilient as possible. Ian, welcome and thank you for being on the Connected Intelligence podcast, my friend.
Thank you, Chuck. It's good speaking with you again.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it only took us like 10 minutes to get everything going. The life of trying to conduct a podcast is always bewildering, isn't it?
It is, yeah. This is my first one, admittedly, so it's all normal to me so far.
Well, I mean, let's face it, we're both in security. You work in a very fast-paced industry, so I mean, probably abnormal is the normal for you.
Absolutely, yeah. Very dynamic space, always changing, and a lot to learn and kind of adapt to.
Uh, Question: It's almost like I figured that segue out in my head. I wish I was that good, but speaking of Coinbase, speaking of kind of these new money streams and these new income and industries that have popped up. I mean, tell me a little bit about yourself and the pathway that led a young Ian to join Coinbase ultimately.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say my journey to Coinbase has been kind of roundabout, just like my career in private security. Unlike a lot of people in our space, I don't come from a law enforcement or a government background. I've only worked in private security since I finished undergrad. I actually started as a surveillance investigator for a private investigation firm down in Los Angeles. So a lot of long hours sitting in a car with no AC on, uh,
Yep.
trying to catch people doing bad things. Um, then from there, I was able to pivot to an executive protection firm, and I think that's really where I really got exposure um, to all of the different facets of private security and how and what private security can offer to both high net worth individuals, corporations, and just how all the different teams kind of fit together. I was really fortunate to have some good mentors there that were incredibly patient with someone that didn't have a law enforcement or government background, and it's been a crawl to a jog to staying at a jog, I would say, at this point in my career. So lots to learn, but um, after the executive protection firm, I ended up at Robinhood. So been in FinTech for the past couple years, and then that was a natural transition over here to Coinbase.
Well, fintech is such a rapid, and growing in fluid industry. And I mean, by the way, I also started as a PI. Most people assume like, oh, that I came from the military, and I had military, but my inroad into to security was as a private investigator as well in the greater Chicago area. So I actually hold PIs close to my heart because I feel a lot of our job back in the day, you said, hey, look, I sat in the car a lot waiting. You learn patience, but it's also around like, hey, I have an objective. I need to figure out how to creatively get this objective done within the resources and the time span and legalities and all that. So I think there's a lot to be learned from that profession that, can help provide insights as a security leader.
I didn't know that. That's super interesting, but I totally agree. All of those things, and the bad guys don't want to make it easy for you. So sometimes you do have to find those creative solutions and find ways to be proactive.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about, speaking of investigations. I mean, without revealing secrets or anything. I mean, tell me a little bit about, in the investigative program, your observations on investigation programs, at large, and what your thoughts are.
Yeah. So, I mean, here at Coinbase, our investigation program is kind of broken into different specialties. My focus area really is that life safety component. So, inappropriate communications, direct, indirect threats of violence, and then all of that other kind of peripheral activity that we think is inappropriate or suspicious that can land on our desk for review, right? And try and get some insight. And our model at my current company is we're a fully remote, globally dispersed workforce. So the types of investigations that come across our desks are just as diverse as the people and the places that they work from. So there is no single model, but I would say what we found a lot of success for our investigation program is, creating a simple, consistent, repeatable framework that can be flexible in the sense to adapt to a lot of different contexts or situations that we're facing, whether it's a standard customer complaint that escalates to a threat of violence, inappropriate pursuit, inappropriate approach, and then dealing with those legalities in all the different jurisdictions. So having a casting a wide net, and then having a really, um, I would say, effective filtering mechanism to kind of get down to, hey, what's actionable, what's immediate, and what do we need to triage. Um, I hope that
I
answered your
love that
question.
idea though of like simple and repeatable.
Yes.
I
Yes.
think that's very important because oftentimes, look, rarely are two persons of interest or incoming threats, similar. But if you have a simple process that you can go through that initial triage, I think is really important. So that I think those are, of the three, I think those are key elements.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then the training to those elements and sticking to the procedure, right? Procedures only work if you follow the run book. And so making sure that everyone's in lockstep as best you can, and providing those resources for, other team members that support investigations to reference to make sure that they're supporting you in that process.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thinking back again when I was a private investigator years and years ago, I mean, we had this mantra, and it was a discipline thing of like, look, if you're doing something, if you were trying to track somebody down or do surveillance or do something, wait 45 minutes. Like, if you think it's done, wait 45 more minutes. And inevitably, during that 45 minutes, the subject would appear,
Mhm.
the claimant would appear, the individual you were looking for would appear. So I think there's something, and maybe that comes from an investigative background of that, like, some might call it like a tactical discipline and tactical patience to like just trust the process and follow it through.
Absolutely. And I loved how you said wait 45 minutes. On my computer desktop, my background is slow down in big bold words, slow down. And
Amen. Amen. A question, just a question for you, because I am, fintech is I'll say fairly new or space. I mean, I'm curious, like, what are your observations? And your employee base is at the edge, which means your duty of care now lives at the edge, which means, like you said, you're getting all kinds of things from all kinds of places. How have you seen the industry change, maybe since COVID or just in the last 3 years?
yeah, great question. I've seen it change a lot. And so when I entered into the space, honestly, it was fairly new to me. I had an interest in it, and I had an opportunity to work within it. And in these past couple years, I've seen it go from, or the narrative around fintech being from a disruptive kind of entity or element to becoming a much more mainstream, right? We're seeing the adoption of digital assets be included in some of the more traditional financial office or offerings and services. Um, the political discourse around digital assets, particularly, has definitely gained a lot of traction recently. And so it's moving further away from, hey, this is a fringe use case, this is an edge case, we're on the periphery of the greater economic system, to more, oh, there's viability here, and there's a lot more adoption. And with a lot more adoption comes, either a lot more users or people interacting with that space. And the more users you have, that also means eventually, some more bad actors come into that ecosystem as well, that they're also learning how to interact and engage with the ecosystem themselves. So it's a bit of cat and mouse at times because there is no playbook or kind of legacy model for us to follow.
Yeah, no, you're building it now, and like you said, you're creating those disciplines and you're creating those processes. I can only imagine, especially with political vitriol, regardless of what side of the fence you're on. A lot. You're right. There's a lot of howling around fintech, especially in the government side. And we're in a year of elections all over the world. So I can only imagine that, that tightens the threat picture. I'm not asking you to reveal anything, but I can only imagine what that does for you guys in fintech to say, like, look, every, everyone hates us, so to speak, and everyone loves us.
Right. I mean, it does seem that way. Like those two, I guess, counterintuitive, or those two counter positions. It's like, how can everyone love us and everyone hate us? There's some diehard people that are absolutely about it. Their identity is built around this kind of new technology, and there's others that are, I want nothing to do with it. I view this as a threat or a risk to X, Y, Z. So yeah, it's two camps for sure.
Well, I mean, you're a big, and you have a, you have, it's not like you have 800 investigators at your beck and call to do everything. Like most people probably watching, listening in, you have a finite resource to do almost an infinite management of monitoring potential threats. And I know you're, one of the reasons I wanted to get you on the shows, you're a big proponent of people, process, technology. We kind of talked about the people in the process. I mean, how does technology play a role in your team, or how have you seen it maybe change over time since being a PI to now, working in fintech?
Yeah, another great question. So we are a small and mighty team, and as I'm sure you know, small teams, their biggest resource is time. So anything that allows us to save time, whether it's through documentation, through monitoring, through alerting and escalations, what have you, um, you know, there's so many systems out there right now that do a lot of disparate activities, but they're not necessarily purpose built to be all tied together. And so, what I am really excited about and continue to be excited about is, we've seen the ability through APIs or backend integrations for other databases, other systems that accomplish various tools that could support investigation, have inroads to be tied together, right? And with Ontic, for instance, having a lot of those feeds then being automatically built into a report and sending into the alerting and updating our cases on our behalf, or at least updating cases for us for things to review and confirm, is a huge time saver, and it's infinitely important. But looking forward, I mean, AI is a hot topic right now. Um, in addition to the monitoring component, I'm really excited about the assessment or the analysis assistance, right? Doing sentiment analysis, helping craft summaries. There's always going to have to be a human in the middle, but that time saving piece of, hey, what is the general, language model saying about what's the sentiment around a certain discourse? Is it positive, negative, neutral? And kind of what's that bluff for us to read so we know where to, divert our attention to and save time and be more efficient.
Well, that's great. I mean, because a lot of it is anomaly. I mean, look, it's pattern recognition, anomaly detection, and if you can automate a lot of the basic investigative activities to keep a file, as we might have called when we were PIs, but a case now hydrated from all the different sources, and then you're right. As we look at AI, friend, foe, or force multiplier, Randolph's take is yes, yes, all of the above. Part of it is how you look at it, and you're absolutely right. There's not only going to be a human in the middle, Ian, but I also do we agree there's going to be a human at the end of that loop too. Like things come in, validated by the human, continues to get churned through AI through the system, and then at the end of that grid or somewhere in that grid where the output's coming, there's an Ian that says ominous dominus, this will go forward and alert it, and the entire grid in the entire ecosystem